Endomorphic processes. Endomorphic processes are the processes which are happening on the surface of the earth. These are due to the endogenetic forces and exogenetic forces. Endogenetic forces is diastrophism and sudden movements are like earthquakes and volcanoes. Endogenetic forces are from within the surface of the earth. Within the surface is what we be having the endogenetic forces. So the sudden movements include earthquakes and volcanoes. Diastrophic is slow and continuous movements. Slow and continuous movements. They are tectonic is a movement of the plates. Eustatic is water balance and isostatic is the balance. Tectonic is epeirogenic continent building and orogenic mountain building is folding and faulting. In the exogenic, we be having degradation or aggradation. In denudational processes include the weathering. Denudation is complete. You are weathered, it gets weathered, it is eroded, transported, erosion, and mass movements. Exogenetic movements are the movements result of all the processes that are acting above the surface of the earth. So the processes are acting above the surface of the earth. The sources of the exogenetic forces are sunlight and gravity. Mass movements are because of the gravity. Sunlight is having an electromagnetic radiation. There's huge changes on the surface of the earth. So because from the sunlight we have the electromagnetic radiations from the sunlight which causes huge changes. The radiation from the sunlight causes huge changes in the surface of the earth. On the surface, so huge changes on the surface of the earth. Now under the influence of the gravity gives energy for the body speed if the moving from higher elevation to, it gives a speed if it is moving from the higher elevation to the lower elevation. It gives energy for the body speed, energy or the speed if it is moving from higher elevation to the lower elevation. What are the agents? Agents are wind is an agent, water is an agent, flowing water is an agent. So wind, a movement of the air from the high pressure to the low pressure is what we have the wind. And the high pressure and low pressure differences is because of the temperature. The high pressure and the low pressure differences is because of the low pressure differences is because of the temperature caused by the sun. So wind is nothing but the movement of the air from the high pressure to the low pressure. Movement of the air from the high pressure to we be having the low pressure. This is high pressure or the low pressure differences because of the temperature caused by the sun. Flowing water is what we have the gravity. For gravity we need to have the rivers, oceans, glaciers, underground water. Action of the endogenetic forces or the forces from within which are causing geomorphic processes. They result in the formation of the mountain, plateau or the plains. The endogenetic forces act along with the earth's surface leads to the formation of the mountains, plateaus and the plains. Various exogenetic agents lead to the degradation is removal, denudation and aggradation is deposition. The relief after some time it is going to level off an entire relief because of the exogenetic and now endogenetic must act in order for the relief to form. Now, endogenetic and exogenetic forces act simultaneously. What is degradation? Weathering. Rock needs to be weathered and then it needs to be transported. And erosion, it is eroded. Mass movements. So we have degradation is also called as denudation. Aggradation. Weathering is the breakdown of the rocks at its own place. At its own place itself, what are the agents in situ? So weathering is the in situ. The agents are sunlight is an agent, rainfall is an agent, and then we have the wind is an agent, the breakdown of the rocks at its own places. Transportation is nothing but the movement of the weathered material. Erosion needs transportation. During transportation, the water carrying the rocks erodes the surface. Erosion on its motion, if it is breaking down something. when it is moving, when due to transportation, when it is moving again during movement, if it a big rock, due to transporting, it is going to have some small breaking of the particles. It is what we be calling it as a erosion. When it is breaking down, when it is moving, is what we call it as a erosion. Erosion needs transportation. During the transportation, the water is carrying the rock, it erodes the surface, right? So the erosion is on its motion if it is breaking. What is weathering? In situ, on its location itself, if the breakdown of the rock at its own place is what in situ. The agents are the sunlight, rainfall, and then we have the wind. Now, mass wasting is a movement in very large scale, is what we have mass movement, mass wasting. Exogenetic movements, right? These are the Earth's movements which are caused due to various forces acting from outside the Earth's surface. The sources of these forces are sunlight and gravity, solar energy and gravity. Involve degradation and aggradation. Aggradation is the action of various processes that cause deposition on the surface in order to bring uniformity of the grade or the slope. So why we are depositing? When we have a depression, things start getting deposited at the depression, right? So for leveling up and uniformity or of grade or slope. So for leveling up, we say this is the uniformity of the grade or the slope. Degradation or denudation processes, it is combined action of various processes that cause wearing away of the Earth's surface and causes a general lowering or leveling out of the surface. It involves weathering, transport, and erosion and deposition. Weathering is the process, the driving force is gravitational force, molecular stress, or the chemical actions itself. Mass movements are because of the gravitational force, and erosion and transportation because of the kinetic energy. The energy due to the motion of the object is what we call it as a kinetic energy. So what is weathering? Weathering, the force which is driving is either it is a gravitational force or it is a molecular stress, the stress which is present in the molecules causing the breakdown of the molecules, or we have the chemical action. The in situ, at that site itself, the in situ disintegration and decay of the rocks without the mass transmission. At the same site itself is what we'll be having the in situ disintegration. It is breaking. And then we have the decaying of the rocks, the disintegration, and then we have the decay of the rocks without any mass transmission. It is a total effect of various processes is cooperating in bringing about the decay and disintegration of the rocks, involving no large transportation. Weathering is in situ, it does not involve the transportation of degraded rock materials, the rock type and the structure. In desert, the weathering is because there is no trees and there is high speed. Some rocks are massive, they are totally solid in structure. The greater massive, the greater strong, and when they are having no layers, the feature of the rock weathering agents are water, and then we have the sunlight. Porosity. The first one is the factors which are affecting the weathering is a rock type and the structure of the rock. Whether it is a igneous rock, if it is having layers as a sedimentary rock, it is subjected to more weathering. So for weathering, we need to know the rock type and the structure of the rock, whether it is a small rock or it is a greater rock. Porosity is the presence of the pore, and permeability is its capacity to release the water or allow the water to pass through. If we pour a water, it is going into the pores and it is permeable, the water comes out. How well the rock spaces are connected? So the first one is related to the rock type and the structure, the second one is porosity, permeability, and third one is permeability. Black soil, it is highly porous but it is not permeable, it does not allow the water to pass through. Then we have the sedimentary rocks, they undergo weathering much than the igneous rock because there are no bedding planes in the igneous rock. There are no layers in the igneous rock. The strength is easier to erode one layer by layer, right? Now we have aquifer, a body of the rock sediment that holds water. It is porous and permeable. Aquifer and a black soil, it is porous but it is not permeable. So the first thing is the rock structure, rock type. Porous permeability. Here we have the examples as the sedimentary rocks, why it is faster weathering than the igneous rocks. It is easier for layer by layer removal. It includes a rock massiveness, permeability, and the presence of the fractures, porosity, bedding plane, etc. The sedimentary rocks are weathered faster than the igneous rock. We have slope and the aspects. Steep slope is what we call it as a slope. Gradual slope, aspect in which direction the weathering is happening. When the surface of is more prone to weathering, this surface is more prone to weathering. That is what aspect, the direction in which weathering is happening. The exposure. Steep slope aids greatly in the weathering as disintegrated material will immediately follow flow down. The slopes which are exposed to the wind, rain, and sunlight are more prone to weathering. Temperature. Slope and the slope aspects are, the first one is related to weathering depends upon, right? The first one is related to the rock and rock type and structure. For the rock type and the structure, we need to have the, in the rock type, igneous sedimentary rocks or metamorphic rock. In the structure, whether they are having porosity, and these are the factors which are affecting the weathering. The first one is the rock type and the structure. In it we have the types of the rocks like the igneous rock, metamorphic rock, and sedimentary rock, and the structure includes the porosity and permeability. These are the things. When the slopes shallow, steep slope, and then gradual slope. The temperature, day expansion of the rocks, but the night is going to be contraction of the rocks. Also, this temperature is the one which is going to lead to the chemical weathering. Due to the heating, the rocks are going to expand in the day, and due to the at the night, the rocks are going to contract. Right. This is how the temperature influences. The temperature also leads to the chemical weathering. The rocks only heat or cold does not cause much weathering, but it is under the influence of the temperature. When they are continuously subjected to the dry day heat and expand, night cold and contract, experiences the weathering due to the temperature. Desert rocks experiences the faster. So the first one is the rock type and the slope and temperature, right? Diurnal is going to be highest and lowest temperature in the same day. What is the temperature difference? Is the highest temperature between 24 hours and the lowest temperature. And what is the temperature over here is what we call it as a diurnal. And annual is the highest and the lowest temperature happening in a year. Considerable range of temperature, both diurnal and annual, subjects the surface layer to expansion and contraction. Temperature also increases at the rate of in temperature also increases the rate of chemical reaction. So the first is the rock type, then we have to see the slope and the temperature, how it is influencing the rock. Diurnal temperature, and then we have the annual temperature as well. And these are the conditions. So as far as now we have seen three things which are influencing the rock, and the third one is water, which is related to the chemical weathering. Water is related to the chemical weathering. After water, we have organisms. So the first one is the rock, the second one is the slope, the third one is the temperature, fourth one is going to be the water, and then fifth one is going to be the organisms. These are the factors which are affecting the weathering process, right? So what are the factors which are affecting the weathering process? Weathering, chemical weathering, weathering water plus the high temperature. Water exerts the pressure. Water vapor deposits in the pore spaces. Day it is going to be it is water vapors are present in the day, and ice during the night. The ice expands, it causes more cracking. The presence or absence of the water decides the chemical reactions. When the water is added or removed, it imposes the mechanical stress on the rock and it causes the splitting. Water is associated with the chemical weathering, right? So water here is associated with the chemical weathering when the water and in high temperature. When it is daytime, the water in the form of the water vapor gets accumulated in the pore, but it is during the night when it becomes ice and ice expands and it causes more cracks. Therefore the presence or absence of the water is the one which decides the chemical reactions. When the water is added or removed, it imposes the mechanical stress on the rocks and it causes it to split. We have organisms like tree roots is going to cause pressure. It can break down even the hardest rocks. Small holes where the seeds are present. Microorganisms, dead and decaying organisms releases the chemicals. It includes the action of the plants, roots, burrowing animals, and decomposing matter. Now, the factors influencing weathering is the rock type, the slope, the temperature, the water, and then the organisms, right? Now, the types of weathering, we are going for the physical weathering or mechanical weathering. Chemical nature does not changes. The chemical nature of the rock does not changes. Chemical nature and biological. The types of weathering we are seeing now. In the types of weathering, the physical or the mechanical is what we be having. The chemical nature does not changes, whereas then the chemical nature of the rock changes. Example, when limestone is reacting with the water or carbon dioxide, and the biological is when organisms are interacting. Mechanical or the physical weathering is a disintegration of the rocks takes place without any change in the chemical constituents of the rock. Whereas in the chemical weathering, the decomposition of the rocks takes place with changes in the chemical constituents of the rock. Temperature, moisture, frost action, wind causes the physical breakdown. Temperature, moisture also causes the minerals in the rocks to dissolve in the water or change the composition. Here, the minerals are dissolving in the water. Minerals in the rock are dissolving in the water. It is more rapid in the desert climates. It is more occurs in the moist and the cold climate. Rocks are affected to greater depths. It mostly takes place near the surface of the earth. The agents are temperature and the moisture. Its agents are water, ocean, oxygen, carbon, and various organisms. When there is a crystal growth, it becomes actually a physical weathering. Salt absorbs the moisture and it expands. It creates more pressure and then cracks. What is the role of the salt? So it absorbs the moisture and the salt is going to expand. So the role of the salt is with respect to absorbing the moisture. It absorbs the moisture and it is expanding, creating more pressure and the cracks. Freeze thaw ice layer is formed. It will melt and refreeze continuously because of the salt weathering. Thermal expansion, due to heat there is a rise in the fall of an expansion. Exfoliation is the layer of the rock expanding and contracting is what we have, the exfoliation. Therefore we have breaking. The layer of the rock which is expanding and contracting is what we call it as the exfoliation. Pressure release, the layers of the rocks exert pressure over the rocks under them. If the above pressures are removed, the lower layers which are previously contact due to the pressure load, now it expands due to the release of the pressure. This leads to the disintegration of the rocks. Initially there was a pressure, right? When this layer is removed, this layer will now expand because it is not having a pressure to be compressed, right, contracted due to the previous load. It expands, then there is a release of the pressure. This leads to the disintegration of the rock. It is block disintegration. The entire block will disintegrate, or granular when the small amount disintegrate. This is the physical weathering by water. And frost shattering. The frost is going to shatter. The granular disintegration, block disintegration, exfoliation is due to the temperature expansion and contracting. Crystal growth, the first one is water and the second one is salt. The salt which absorbs the moisture and it grows. When the water freezes, it expands. When the water finds its way, it cracks and pores and wedges out apart from the rock fissures and joints. It results in frost shattering in the desert regions and freeze thaw in the glacier regions. Salt weathering. It is a growth of the salt crystals in the crystallization, that is moisture evaporates, thus creating pressure in the space and cracks. It is also called as haloclasty. Salt. Halo means salt. So when the salt absorbs salt crystals, absorbs moisture, creates pressure and a space, it is called as haloclasty. Now what is the pressure or the thermal expansion? Exfoliation is due to the temperature increase, it is expanding and contracting, is what we have the exfoliation. And pressure release, when the confining pressure from the weight of the overlying rocks is released when the overlying cover is removed, causes the rocks to expand. Block disintegration and granular disintegration. Now the types of weathering, in the types of weathering we have seen the physical weathering, right? The types of weathering, the firstly we saw the physical weathering. The first is the crystal growth, when the water is going to grow and it is because of the water is what we have crystal grow, right? Then in the salt also we call haloclasty, the crystals water, and then we have the salt, how it reacts with the rock. Then heat and the temperature and pressure. Temperature is thermal expansion and pressure is temperature is also called as exfoliation, and pressure is, we call it as the granular disintegration and block disintegration, right? So the crystal growth is water, and in the salt weathering we call haloclasty, the pressure and the temperature is exfoliation and pressure is block disintegration or granular disintegration. These are the types of physical weathering. Mechanical weathering. Now when we go for chemical weathering, we have various here, the change in the chemical composition, needs of water, and then the temperature. Chemical weathering is related to the water, or we have the temperature. The first one is hydrolysis, hydration, right? Hydrolysis, hydration. Then we have oxidation or reduction, carbonation, right? These are the types. So here hydrolysis, hydration. Hydrolysis is going to be that chemical union of water with a particular material with the soil rock, melting it and making it a solution. Hydrolysis is going to be mixing, right? Water CO2 reaction with the limestone is hydrolysis. Hydration is water is absorbed in the rock swelling and absorbing and keeping it in the molecular structure. Water is added into the rock and it is keeping it with the molecular structure is hydration. Hydrolysis is the water reacting with the materials, the water reacting with a particular material in the rock. For example, the water or the carbon dioxide, it is reaction with the limestone. Water reacting with the limestone and forming a solution is what hydrolysis. Hydration is when the water is absorbed and it is integrated into the molecular structure of the rock, is what we have the hydration. So this is the difference between hydrolysis, hydration, oxidation, reduction, carbonation. Oxidation is the adding of the oxygen, reduction is the removal of the oxygen. Carbonation is the atmosphere contains good amount of the carbon dioxide. Rain is mixed with the carbon dioxide, it creates a weak acid called as carbonic acid, which erodes the rocks, particularly the limestone. This process is what we call it as carbonation. The atmosphere contains carbon dioxide, right? Now rainwater is mixed with the carbon dioxide. The rainwater is mixing with the carbon dioxide and it is creating a weak acid, is called as a carbonic acid. It creates a weak acid called as a carbonic acid. It erodes a rock. It creates a weak acid and it erodes a rock. Now, what are the processes? Hydrolysis is when it is mixing with the materials. Then we have hydration is when the water is integrated. Hydration is when the water is integration. Then we have oxidation, reduction, carbonation. Right, these are the types. Now what is biological weathering? Biological weathering is because of the plant roots, microorganism, burying of the organisms. Now as far as we have seen what are the factors which are responsible for the weathering, and types of weathering is mechanical weathering, chemical weathering and biological weathering. In biological weathering, we are going for the organisms. In chemical weathering, we are going for hydrolysis, hydration, and oxidation, reduction, carbonation. Right now, in the physical weathering, we are going first is the temperature and the pressure. When the temperature is called exfoliation, the pressure we have block disintegration or granular disintegration. Now, after that, we are going for the water or the salt. Right, crystal growth is what we have when we have the water or the salt. This is the physical weathering. Uh, Here, these are the types of the weathering. Before that, we have seen the what are the effects of weathering, right? Factors affecting the weathering. The rock's type and the structure is the one. So five factors, which is the first one, the rock itself. The rock type is igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks. Structure is it is going to have porosity or permeability. Factors which are affecting the weathering, right? Next is slope, and we have temperature, slope, and the temperature, diurnal and annual, water, and microorganisms. Then previously we just introduced into weathering, transportation, erosion. We are seeing the types of denudation. Weathering, transportation, erosion, mass movements, right? Erosion, we have kinetic energy, mass movement, gravitational. For weathering, we are going for the gravitational. Molecule itself is having a stress or chemical action. The next thing which we are going to see is weathering is completed here. Now, exogenic movements is degradation and aggradation. In degradation, we have weathering is mechanical weathering, and then we have chemical weathering, biological weathering, transportation, erosion, denudation. Crystal growth is hydrogen, water and salt haloclasty, freezing and freeze-thaw frosting. Pressure thermal expansion, exfoliation, pressure release, Brock granular, hydrolysis, hydration, oxidation reduction, carbonation. Types of chemical weathering, we are going for the it is the chemical union of the water and the mineral. The water plus the mineral is what we have the hydrolysis, specific chemical change in which the new material is produced. Hydration occurs when the minerals incorporate water into the molecular stress. It causes swelling. Oxidation is reduction. It's the addition or the removal of the oxygen which is causing discoloration. It is the first visible signs of the chemical weathering. Carbonation is when the rainwater absorbs carbon dioxide as it falls through the air and gets converted into carbonic acid. Limestone and dolomites are altered by dissolving action of carbonic acid. Biological weathering is the breakdown of the particles by burrowing animals and pressures exerted by the plant roots. The decomposing organic matter releases a different chemical which increases the rate of weathering. Reactions with minerals by organisms may bring changes in the rocks. Organisms such as chemotrophic bacteria also. Now we are going to see the erosion. As the particles are transported, it is getting eroded. Right. This is what erosion is. The source of the erosion is the solar energy, sun, gravitational force, and then we have wind, precipitation. Wind as well as the precipitation. River water carries the sediments, the coastal regions, the coastal water. Underground is the karst topography. Glacier is the huge blocks of ice is elevated region. Summer it is going to melt and erodes most of the region. When agents are in motion, they carry the weathering materials, and during the part it breaks down the other materials. Erosion refers to wearing away of the land surface by mechanical action of the debris driven from weathering, as they are transported to different locations by the agents like the wind, water, etc. Now, types of erosion is abrasion, right? Abrasion, corrosion, attrition, abrasion, attrition. The types. Then we have corrosion, abrasion, attrition, corrosion, cavitation, deflation, hydraulic action, plucking. Then we have to see about the mass movements.